Back once again, uncut and unfiltered in our beautiful new digs here provided by the Whiskey Exchange. Joined as ever by Posh. How are you, Posh? You ready?
Hello. As always.
Buzzing to get stuck in. And we are so glad to welcome on board the first guest who you'll be seeing all the time now. He's not really a guest. He's going to be part of the furniture here. Billy Abbott. Welcome to the pod. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. Thanks very much for having me along. Well, having me along into my own office.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us along, actually.
Welcome to the Whiskey Exchange's bar room, the finest bar within about 2-3 miles, the only bar within several miles in the beautiful industrial estate heartlands of Park Royal.
It's
apart from our houses, probably.
Stunning spot, yeah.
So I only live down the road. I've got a pretty good bar. Maybe not quite as good as this one.
Fantastic, guys. Listen, I am buzzing. This is going to be the first proper full episode of the new Uncut and Unfiltered moving forward. We have got guests like Billy, like Dawn, like Jason, all the people here at the Whiskey Exchange who are going to be able to give you so much more value, so much more insight on all the drams that we get to try. Don't worry, though. Ian and I aren't going anywhere. You'll still get our stupidity and we'll all have a bit of crack. Now, today, we have got a particularly exciting episode. This is Trending Whiskies of 2026. We've all brought a little something here. What is it, Billy, that you think is exciting about whiskey moving into 2026? Is this an exciting time for whiskey?
There's lots of stuff going on, and there's a lot of re-examination going on.
Yes.
So if we look at the different parts of the industry, the general consumers, people aren't drinking so much, so they're looking for more interesting things, looking for a reason to drink something and stretching beyond their normal. When you look more towards the sort of the geekier, more enthusiast, connoisseur, whatever you want to call us, almost certainly.
Yes.
We are looking for something a little bit different, something a little bit interesting beyond even what the regular consumers are. There's so much stuff out there and people are putting out lots of things and everybody's trying to find their little uniqueness, their thing which makes them different. And yes, it's exciting times.
Exciting times indeed. And Ian, I mean, we've all seen quite a bit of negativity over the last year or so within the world of whiskey. I personally don't think it's necessarily warranted because, as Billy's just highlighted, you know, whilst there is tough times for distillers and conglomerates and the businesses on the back end, actually as a consumer, there hasn't been a more exciting time in whiskey in my mind for the last 10 plus years because of all of this ingenuity, all of these new products that are starting to come out. Is there anything that you can see as being a bit of a trend moving into 2026 before we look at these specific whiskies?
What's interesting is I think there's the rise of countries that have started their distilling journey kind of more recently than obviously Scotland and Ireland as the traditional stuff we see over here, and we've got some of that coming up later on.
Definitely.
I think also what's going to be interesting is people maybe going to look to kind of value or interest in different casks. Like I was talking just a couple of days ago on my own channel about Pinot de Chronk casks. Like that's something we've seen coming into the industry probably only in the last 2-3 years. Like Balvenie have got a permanent
they're really drawing
range
on that provenance, right?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be really interesting to see if we see more kind of disclosed wineries or kind of other people going, oh, maybe we'll try this cask or that cask. Like maybe the SWA like rules get relaxed again, and you know we see a cider cask or whatever else coming in. I think there's opportunities that are still there for distillers to be taking.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It is a really exciting time. I think more than anything, we will see distilleries and these brands starting to kind of branch out a little bit. No longer can you put 3, 4, 5-year-old juice on the shelves for £100 and just have it sat there for the sake of being there, right? We need stuff that is exciting. As you say, Billy, you need something that's going to get a buyer to make that decision of, that's the bottle for me, actually. Grab it off the shelf, crack it open with friends and family. And I think we've got 5 really great examples of that today. Starting off, gents, we've got the Glengoyne White Oak, which I know all of you guys at home, you'll have seen this as a fan favourite, particularly for myself in season 1 of Uncut. The reason I wanted to bring this along today, aside from the fact that it's probably one of the most popular whiskies of 2025, right, Billy? Would that be fair to say?
It's been going down really well. It's, you know, hits that right price point, and a really easily approachable flavor profile.
Yes.
You know, I saw when this popped up for the first time, tried it at a whiskey show whose name I shall not mention because it's not our one. Anyway, I wandered over to see the guys at Glengoyne and they went, you got to try this.
Yes.
And it's just really sort of sat there. It's not jumped out and made a big sort of load of noise. It's just sat there in the background as this is a great whiskey to go and find if you're looking for something every day.
Yes, absolutely. I think what's wonderful about it as well is we've known Glengoyne, particularly people like Ian, who've been fans of Glengoyne for many, many moons now. We know it to be this big, rich sherried dram. And so all of a sudden they're coming out with a bourbon matured, virgin oak matured, and it's actually just letting the spirit shine through. You know, it's not toying around with anything. It's incredibly simplistic in its design, in its execution, but it is just so well done, you know? And I think exactly that, making it accessible, but also giving consumers that slightly different spin on a brand that they know and love is really, really exciting. Not something that we've seen a huge amount from other big brands, in my opinion.
I think also what I like about this release is it's not just this one bottle, there's the two bottles as well, right? You've got the entry level, you've got the no age statement, and there's the 24-year-old.
Trust you to jump straight onto talking about the old and rare stuff. Yeah,
it's fantastic. That when I tried this at the that anonymous show, excellent show, but I can't talk about it. They gave me the 24 and they gave me this, and it was just, these are both a totally different look at Glengoyne. You know, I'm a big fan of bourbon casks. And the excitement for me here is that everybody's trying to do Weird and Wonderful casks at the moment, and they just went,
no.
Our Weird and Wonderful cask is the exact opposite of Weird and Wonderful.
Yeah,
and that's
it's
really
the most used, most standardized cask in all of Scotch whiskey. Exactly, it's great.
But I guess what I'm wondering is whether more distillers will kind of put out, like, here's our entry level cool thing, and then also here's our other more
slightly
expensive
older
cool
rendition
thing, right?
of. Yeah,
Like if you look at, like, say Glencadam as well, was another kind of distillery that I'd like a lot. They've got their, you know, cask series that's coming out about £40-45 for the no age statement ones, and then most of the time you will see an or even two like older age stated versions kind of the same thing as well, kind of more aimed at the enthusiast, the connoisseur. So, you know, is that something we're going to be seeing more of as well?
Now, I don't mind seeing more of that sort of thing, but my hope is that the execution can be done at the same level as what Glengoyne have done, because the entry level version of this, and obviously for everyone at home, we wanted to make sure that the drams we're selecting as trending whiskies moving forward are not only very trendy, very interesting, but also accessible from a price point of view. The 24-year-old version isn't as accessible, right?
Nope.
But you get that significant jump in quality. And so, you know, we're looking at this this beautiful non-age statement version, £45.75 on the Whiskey Exchange right now, okay? For less than £46, you are quids in here. You're absolutely laughing. You're going to get some great drams, some great cocktails. You're going to have some crack with your friends and family, right? With the 24-year-old, yes, it is going up into the hundreds of pounds, but you have really got that quality. It's something, again, we've all tried it, right? We've supped and savored on that. It is phenomenal. I'm not sure if there's going to be other distilleries that can execute to such a high level. I'd love to see it. I would love to see it. Is there anything that you know similar that might be happening at the minute, Billy? Any other brands doing similar things?
Again, we look at the big brands, you know, people are sort of playing around with their ranges, age statements. We've seen Glenmorangie shift up to a 12 for similar price to the 10, and they also do it at both ends. I think that, you know, something like Glengoyne is interesting because they have the stock to be able to do it. They have the younger stock, they have the older stock. Glencadam is a bit of a weird one because they don't necessarily have the older stock because they came in and bought it a few years back. So they now have their own, I think it must be 16 years ago they bought it. And so they have the stock up to about that age, but beyond that, they're digging into the previous regime. And so finding things with similar cask makeups is more difficult. And it's not really the way that most distillers on the planet.
Yeah.
And so I can see us seeing more of this, but it is a bit of a strange one. It is more difficult for the distillers to do. But it's when you get folks like Glengoyne who have such an incredible stock that they can play around with, which they have laid down in such a fashion to give them that flexibility.
Yeah.
I think what would be interesting is, like, if you look at, say, Glenfiddich, they've come out recently with a bunch of quite high end, like, different cask types. Grand Cron, Grand Cru, right? But they're all 20 plus. Be really interesting to see if they were willing to go the other way and do a no age statement version of it. Because you've seen it a little bit with Balvenie as well. I mentioned that Pinot cask, right? There's the 16-year-old that is part of the core range. They put out a I don't know whether it's a single cask or a small batch, an 18-year-old as part of their kind of story/curious casks range as well.
Right.
So they're kind of doing it in their own way as well. But I think, Glenfiddich would be a really interesting
would be
one.
a fantastic
Kind
example
of go in
of a
reverse.
distillery that
Yeah.
could execute really well on that sort of thing. And again, quite a robust spirit. It would do well in a range of different casks, particularly if we can punch in a load of colour and flavour early on, having that younger rendition. Yeah, I like the idea of it.
Glenfiddich's a weird one because they are the biggest single malt, it's biggest selling individual single malt expression. There's all these different biggest selling in different ways, and Glenlivet gets in there for other things. But no, for Glenfiddich, Glenfiddich 12-year-old is the biggest selling individual single malt in the world. I think it still is. But they do a lot of sales at the high end, and the Grand Courant, the Grand Cru, the Grand Yozakura, all these different things. They hit that market a lot, but we don't normally see it because often we're not the people they're aiming for that.
For sure.
Where they're not looking at the connoisseur sort of consume geeky people. They're looking at the folks who like high-end whiskey, but aren't necessarily diving into as much detail as we might. So Glenfiddich had done a load of work with weird casks. Brian Kinsman has done a lot of experiments back in the days when David Stewart was helping out as well, before he moved over to Balvenie, and I think he's now very retired. Occasionally rolled out to sort of say hello to everybody and be lovely. But they've done so much experimentation with casks over the years. They really are experts at it. But at the same time, Glenfiddich 12 being their base thing, I don't think we're going to see any NASs from them because that literally dives into a world they don't need to play around with.
Right.
Yeah,
They're already so
Exactly.
successful with what they've done. Why change it, right?
Oh, and it's that premium thing as well. People, again, outside of the geek world, people are very obsessed with age statements even now. I remember years ago, Benromach said, we're going to do a 5-year-old. We're going to put it in the supermarket, and it flopped because everybody in the supermarket went 5 smaller than 12.
Right.
So the bigger number is the better number. That's how numbers work.
Yeah.
So Glenfiddich, I don't think we're going to see them give up that, and they don't need to drop below that. And they also have the stock. They can say, here's a 12-year-old. We have the Nectar d'Or and the La Santa and all these sorts of... Oh, it's Glenmorangie, sorry. Same distillery in my book.
No.
They have that ability to do those things, and they have the 14-year-old, whatever they call it these days, used to be Rich Oak, and they have those bits they've been playing with. I don't see something like that. And that's a gigantic ship to turn.
For sure.
But I think, people like Glenmorangie, I think we see more of them. You see all their tales of things, Cake and Tokyo being obvious comparable things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think we'll see some of the bigger guys doing it, but maybe not William Grants, who are...
But more is an interesting one. But more obviously kind of came in with their more sherried rendition of their core range, which really took us by surprise and was very well welcomed. We've always said we struggled with the 12 and even kind of the 15 with the standard core from Bowmore. I think some different renditions, different types of sherry from Bowmore, even looking at kind of unique genuses of virgin oak or whatever, like what Billy Walker's doing over at Glenallachie, get some chinkapin, get some cool. I would be very interested to see young Bowmore would be perfect for that sort of style, right?
Again, they've been playing around, like they've got their travel retail stuff, which I think has got some like more wine stuff in, or the
brands like that where they are playing around kind of on the outskirts a bit. I'd like to see more core, like a core staple product like this, where we know, God, for 45, 46 quid, you could just bang. That's perfect. You know what I mean?
I think we've always said as well, like, I'm not saying it's necessarily a problem that Glengoyne in the early kind of age statements is 43%, but this just works very well at 48. I think we've all again said, like, Bowmore works generally better at higher ABVs. I'd be willing to trade the age statement for a higher ABV, but more in an interesting cask.
Dib. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
It's been intriguing to see Bowmore dive into that because Bowmore are known for their sherry casks in the white in the geek world, but not in the general consumer world. All their stuff's bourbon, apart from the darkest, or whatever they call it these days.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, they're exclusive to us when they launched these Bowmores, and people were just very confused because they're like, this is exactly the same range next to it, but they're different. Are they the same? Are they different? What's going on?
Right.
And people have finally sort of like come around to understand it a bit more. But
that's
it's
interesting. There's been a bit of a lack of clarity there you found with consumers.
If you have a Bowmore 12-year-old, then you have a Bowmore 12-year-old sherry, and the colour's obviously very different, so they're easy to tell apart. But just on an immediate communication, it was quite difficult.
Yeah.
People have started to understand it, and people have started seeing Bourbon sherry being a thing you can actually get hold of now without going to the distillery, finding handfills or spending ridiculous amounts of money.
Oh.
And so it is introducing some of their more famous stuff in a way that I've always wondered, why did they not do that more?
Right.
That said, I love them more from bourbon more than I do from sherry, so I've always been quite pleased because I could quite happily jump and grab that stuff easily.
No, for sure.
But no, it's that thing of people trying to find something in their warehouse. What stocks do they have that they can do something interesting with? And with more, they've been playing around with sherry. It's like parallel sherry range, and it's someone like Glenmorangie where they have so many experiments and they just pick out a few bits and pieces. You can find these folks now playing around on the oak front. Rosé have done this right from the beginning.
Yeah.
You talk about chinkapins and things like that. That's the point where the guys from Rosé go, yes, we are here for you.
Yeah. We'll come into our wonderful warehouse and look around. Absolutely. For sure. Well, for me, the White Oak has been just such a winner. I have gone through cases of the stuff. It's absolutely spectacular. And for everyone at home, if you haven't picked up a bottle, as we've all said, it's just one of those things. Maybe it's not going to, blow your hair back or anything, but it's one of those things that's just going to sit on your shelf and be a staple. Once you finish the first bottle, you'll almost definitely grab a second. Ian, you came forward with the next one, the Boann. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about the selection there?
Not really.
No.
So I was invited along to the Whisky Exchange Whisky of the Year kind of blind tasting, and we've got 2 that appeared in that kind of full lineup.
For sure.
The Boann was one of them, and it was all blind tasting, obviously, and I was really, really positively surprised by this. Irish whiskey, I often find is quite sweet. It's not something that I have a lot of. There's the occasional kind of Cooley and Cadden Heads have got some interesting stuff, but it's not, I'm sorry to say,
not something that you lean into.
That I lean into an awful lot.
Fair enough.
I tried this, never having had a Boann before, and went, all right, I like this a lot.
So it's triple distilled, pot still whiskey. Is it exclusively matured in the Madeira cask, or is this a Madeira cask finish? Do we know, Billy?
I'm fairly sure. I don't know much about the Madeira one. I know a lot more about their grain than I know about their actual final spirit.
Right, okay.
But I'm fairly sure this is a full maturation because, as you can tell from the nose and the palate of it, it's not very long, not very old. So it's not been long in the cask. So for them to do a finish after a short amount of time feels a little bit weird. But also just the character of it. They have been taking their spirit and popping it into different types of cask. It's still early days for Boann. And so this regular spirit they're doing, they are experimenting. So each of these is almost like a consumers. Tell us which one you like best. And it just gives us an idea of what they're coming up with before they come out with the proper range down the line.
Right. Okay. I'm getting, it is very unique. Yep. For an Irish whiskey particularly, I wouldn't have necessarily picked it out as an Irish whiskey at all.
I didn't.
No.
I'm tasting it blind.
It's got this really interesting sweet dryness to it that then for me turns into very much like an umami sort of style mid to end palate there. But as you say, Billy, it is quite a short dram. You kind of sup on it and it's like, yum, it's gone. We better have another sup, It is.
We are seeing more stuff come from I say this is their regular mash bill that they're putting out. They have a lot of experimental ones as well. They've done a lot of historical work, and a lot of what we hear from them is they're more sort of weird and wonderful. This is our recipe from the 1870s and all this sort of business. They've been working with Fionn O'Connor, who's a credible researcher into the wonderful world of whiskey. He's just released a paper, his thesis from his PhD,
right,
which is on my phone, which I'm very sorry to say I have not read yet because it is an academic paper about the history of Irish whiskey, and need to be in the right mood.
Pretty substantial, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a big. It's got an incredible book project coming out soon as well, looking at that. And if you can find it out there, it's got a book called A Glass Apart, which is a history of pot still whiskey, which I now lend to people because people can't find it anywhere near as easy. So they've done a lot of work on that side, but just their regular spirit, they're looking at pot still. They're trying to create something which is just a really great quality new make, and then they're experimenting with casks.
Right.
And for me, there's a fruitiness in here, which I find in some of my favourite pot stills, because pot still people talk about spiciness and richness and graininess, but there's always a fruit. And the fruit in here is really sort of developed. It's a moment sort of candied peel at this sort of early stage for me.
For me, it's definitely more of exactly an artificial sweet candiness to it than a juicy fruit.
And that Madeira cask is going to have amplified that as well. There's a nice sort of sweet sort of wine sort of in there as well. That's going to boost those fruity notes.
Right.
But I'm big fan of what they do. And I met the guys at a variety of whiskey shows. Never been over there, but strangely, last time I was having a chat with them in Spain, as one does, at Whiskey Live Madrid, and they're trying to get their whiskey out and around the world at the moment, and just try and get that feedback to understand more how their spirit works in different places.
Yeah.
What I would love to be a trend, I don't really see it happening, is still a little bit more transparency around casks where it's possible. Madeira as a kind of category of its own, fascinating. You kind of see it and you think, oh, Madeira is like sweet wine, but actually it's kind of similar almost to sherry. It covers like from dry all the way through to sweet. I know not a huge amount about it,
but enough to know that there's a huge amount to know, right? This is it.
Exactly. And you generally just see this is a Madeira cask. It's like, okay, well, all right.
Give us something else. Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah.
It's like saying it's a sherry cask when actually you used a Fino cask, and then you taste it and you go, well, why the hell is this so dry? Like, why is it a bit salty? Like, this is not what I was expecting after I'm used to sitting there and drinking a load of Oloroso and PX matured stuff and expecting that kind of nutty sweetness that it brings. So it would be great to know a little bit more about different types of casks, how they're used, and have that kind of detail for the nerds like me.
Absolutely, yeah. That would be a great trend to see in 2026. More information.
Well, the thing behind that is that you're saying you don't know very much about Madeira. And that's the problem we often find is when we do get that extra information, people smile and nod and go, thank you for the extra words. I'll file that away in my things I know but have no use for. So one of the things we try and do at the Whiskey Exchange is we're all about education. You know, I'm our ambassador, but I'm also our head of internal education. And I do external education stuff as well. So last year, I think it was last year, I was meant to do a tasting with Chris Blandy of Blandy's Madeira and do a Madeira cask and Madeira's comparison, so we can teach people about Madeira and how different Madeiras change the flavour of whiskies in the cask. We've seen it done with sherry before. We've never seen one with Madeira.
And if that's an episode that you would like Billy to host on Uncut Season 2, drop it in the comments below, because you can guarantee we're bringing you all that sort of value.
I'm going. Yeah, I'm going.
Ian and I immediately in the comments. Yes, please.
Only problem we had is that Chris Blandy got stuck in Madeira. So fortunately, we do have an in-house master of wine. So Dawn came down and she and I did the tasting.
Wicked.
But again, it's that fantastic thing of when you dive into understanding a bit more, we can often find out that information, even if it's not on a bottle. And, you know, one of our little sort of new slogans from our sort of new reinvention we've had at the end of last year is that the more you know, the better it tastes. Understanding what you're drinking will always give you more of an appreciation of what it is. So yeah, very, very much. If we could get more of that, that'd be lovely.
Yeah. I mean, I totally appreciate the point that people will read the words and file it away, but I guess there's enough people out there that are kind of like, oh yeah. All right.
It's choosing the right whiskies, which are going to be hitting the right people.
Yeah,
it's always the fun thing, you know.
For sure.
Glenfiddich 12-year-old, you're not necessarily going to give them a full cask breakdown.
No.
So someone picks up in the supermarket and goes, oh, this has got some Fino in it. Interesting. But it is that thing of, you know, very much, you know, our ranges that we do, our exclusives and things like that, we try and find out. And say, if you've played around with casks, as I know, at least one of us around here has done, finding that information is often absolutely ridiculously difficult because nobody actually knows. So we do our best. But yeah, hard to do sometimes.
I'm picking up this like you're talking about fruitiness, which, like I say, for me is definitely more along that sort of artificial, more candied side. There's also like a spoiled fruit in here for me. This is a very diverse and odd whiskey, like in a great way.
Yeah,
it's very, very unique. What are you getting from it? What sort of?
I definitely get that kind of little bit of kind of spoiled.
I can't put my finger on it.
Can feel a little bit kind of stone fruit. It's like kind of a slightly moldy peach or something.
Yeah,
peaches and apricots is my thing I was getting. But it's not quite slightly moldy. It's that whole fermenting.
It's just spoiling.
That's a better way.
And that's the thing, is that these are the flavors generated during that fermentation are the flavors which you're generating the fermentation of your grain. If you can push it in the right way and you use your right yeast, your right conditions, you can start generating that type of fruitiness. That's when you get to like over the top stupid rum funkiness, is when you get into the extreme levels of that. But just managing that to get that fruit through fermentation with grain is something I really, really appreciate. I like a fruity dram. And so I
love a fruity dram, but I love something like this where there's actually a lot more than just, oh, it's fruity. It's sweet. It's actually, this takes you on a real journey. There's a lot to this. And this is non-age statement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's 47% ABV, £69.50 on the Whiskey Exchange. I think that's incredibly reasonable for what we're supping on here.
I think for kind of something, a little bit different coming out of Ireland, I'm very glad to be drinking this. Like, I never personally got on with Waterford. Obviously, perhaps a bunch of people didn't, given what's happened with them as a business, sadly. This is
much more exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As I said, it's got kind of, to me, it's got like a bit of a kind of a doughiness that comes through after fruitiness, and then it gets a little bit more savory. Definitely takes you on a kind of nice journey through the mouth.
Absolutely. Very, very cool. Now, we've gone from Scotland to Ireland, which I think most whiskey fanatics, most of you at home, whiskey, uncut and unfiltered, Scotland to Ireland. We're now bouncing to China. Is that right?
We're going a long way.
We're going a long way. Very good.
I've been thinking about that in my head for the last...
Excellent work there.
Yeah.
There we go.
And it is pronounced Goalong Distillery.
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's an interesting bottling this summer. It's the first release of Chinese whiskey in the UK.
Okay.
We're very fortunate to get it as an exclusive at the Whiskey Exchange when it landed. But this is not just about this one whiskey I want to sort of talk about here, is that this is the beginning, I think, of the trend is generally is whiskey from all around the world, especially over in the Far East, over in East Asia.
Yeah.
And Goalong was the first. We have a second turning up. Well, there's a few others around now, but the second we're focusing on, the Whiskey Exchange, turns up very soon. Laizhou, which I've been waiting for since I went to visit them last year, and love their whiskey. But Goalong was the first one, and it shows very much sort of different sides of what's happening in China. China's quite big, as you may have heard, and I always predicted that we wouldn't see very much of their whiskey over here because it would be sold within China. The guys at Goalong focus on export. They are a big spirits company. They don't only make whiskey, they make brandy, they make vodka, they make gin. They export to a variety of countries around the world, from Russia to the USA. Okay. And they started making whiskey. And this is the first Chinese whiskey I tried. And it's absolutely solid. And it's not going to change your life or redefine what whiskey is. It's just absolutely solid, well-made whiskey. This special edition we're trying at the moment is also matured in Chinese brandy casks. So they make brandy themselves.
Brandy, isn't it? Yeah.
It's bourbon and brandy. So they use bourbon casks, but they also use brandy casks using their own Chinese brandy that they make. Because pretty much every spirit we can find anywhere else in the world, somebody's probably making it in China.
Yeah.
Because they have such a huge local market and it's very difficult to import on occasion. So they have a load of domestic versions of products. And from my tasting of a variety of Chinese spirits over the past couple of years, generally they're pretty solid. I'm a big Baijiu fan. I like Asian spirits in general, and I love Baijiu. And I was over in China to judge Baijiu for the IWSC at Laizhou Distillery. They hosted us, but I ended up my first day doing whiskey. And, judging with their distiller, trying a load of different Chinese whiskies and just being really impressed by the quality of stuff that is now being made. Most of which we'll never see because it's being made for a Chinese market, so they don't have to import quite so much stuff from overseas.
Right. Okay.
So, very, very fortunate to have this. We have some Laizhou coming soon. I really hope so, because I didn't bring anywhere near as much back as I wanted to. Price-wise, that's not going to be too expensive. This isn't too expensive either. All fairly reasonable. But it's just a really exciting time where we see these new countries, Korea's got some great things coming out now as well. This guy's in Vietnam, whose name I can never remember because it's 3 syllables and it's got lots of interesting Vietnamese letters involved. But lots of great stuff coming over from East Asia. Thailand, we have some Prakan up on the shelf behind us.
Yeah.
It's lots of countries you wouldn't expect over in East Asia now saying, well, Japan's done it. Taiwan's done it.
Wait. Yeah.
We buy a load of whiskey. Why don't they make it as well?
And on that note, Billy, I'd love to understand the connection between China and kind of old world whiskey, so to speak, because Japan has such a connection to Scotland, right? And they really did kind of emulate a lot of what Scotland was doing over in Japan. Is it the same in China? Is it the same in Thailand? Is it the same in these Far East countries where they're now starting to really sort of pump out all different styles? Or are they trying to kind of create their own unique sort of style, their own unique, whatever it may be within whiskey. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it depends on the distillery. It depends on the country. In China, they're going both ends. They're going for very traditional whiskies, which, very much, if you tried them next to Scottish whiskies, Irish whiskies, American whiskies,
You wouldn't be able to tell.
you sort of say, I can see where they're coming from. You might tell there's something slightly different.
Yeah.
But the guys at Lizhou are importing Scottish peat to make their peated whiskey.
Right.
Their head distiller trained at Heriot Watt. So, there's a lot of connection there. The guys at Goalong, they make their own spirits as well. And so they're taking the ideas of old world whiskey making techniques. But they also are almost certainly playing around with local spirits as well.
Yeah.
The guys at Lizhou, they're in the center of strong aroma baijiao production for China and near Chengdu, Chonglai, this huge area where they have loads and loads of distilleries making traditional Chinese spirits, which are made in a very different way to traditional grain spirits that we have. There's no malting. It's all to do with just letting weird moldy things grow. The fermentation, rather than being in a liquid beer, is a whole pile of just dry grains which they ferment dry. Their stills look like pot stills, but actually are functionally packed column stills. It's totally different way of making spirits.
Really interesting.
So some of those ideas are being incorporated into some of the distilleries.
Okay.
But then also things like Thailand, Prakan, that's International Beverage, the guys who own Old Pulteney and Speyburn and the rest of the gang.
Yeah.
And so they're really leveraging those ideas as well as using local ingredients and local climate to shape it. So there's different ways of approaching these things. And again, it comes down to, are we going for our local market, in which case don't care about you evil foreigners, or are we going to be going for the export market, in which case it's a little bit of a, have to sort of cater to them a little bit.
For sure.
Lizhou's whiskey, very palatable over here. Local baijiao, nobody over here wants to drink baijiao apart from me and about 4 or 5 very strange people.
Fair enough.
No, it's interesting because Ian McAllister from Glen Scotia has recently been sent out to China to head up one of the distilleries over there, hasn't he?
Yeah. And it's that thing of, at the moment, folks, especially over in East Asia, are saying, let's find some people over in Scotland who might not be as utilised as they could be, and let's see if they want to come and play,
Yeah.
I've forgotten his name. It's very, very rude of me. Guy at Lefroy a little while back disappeared off to Korea. Then Brendan McCarran, formerly of Ardbeg Glenmorangie, then over to Deanston and the rest of the still things. He's now an international consultant and has bounces around all over the world, sort of helping put together distilleries. There's just people all over the place now trying to get some of that knowledge from the old world, but also using their own local experts and local expertise to try and sort of shape a new type of thing on occasion.
Yeah. I guess Jim Swan for a while had a bit of a kind of monopoly on it, but as he's no longer with us...
Indeed, yeah. Now, Jim, he did a lot of work in sort of creating these new ideas, and people are carrying those on now.
Yeah.
But we see, Davar Gandhi's currently put out a load of interesting cask methodologies, very similar to Jim did a lot of work on casks and use in different climates. Dav's now taken on, done a load of that sort of work. But it's also very much that allying of distillation with local. And that's the bit which I'm really intrigued with. We see more people playing around with that idea of how do we take our own local tradition. It's early days.
Make it accessible globally,
yeah. We see it in lots of countries. If you look in the Nordics at the moment, we have the individual countries are trying to work out what their way of making whiskey is. Do we have a Danish style of whiskey yet? I would say no. We have a lot of very interesting and really nice whiskey from Denmark, but they are, I think actually of all the countries up there who are playing around and making whiskey, they have the widest range of flavours in such a small country in comparison to the size of the others in the Nordics. But they are very much saying, let's try what we want to do and see if we can actually have a style. And they all talk to each other, all the guys, the distillers up that part of the world, exchanging ideas and trying to work out how to make their thing uniquely theirs.
It sounds like they might need to have regions like Scotland at some point if it's that diverse, right?
Well, Whisky Show last year, we had our Nordic area.
Right.
And so we got folks from all of the, from Finland, Norway, Sweden and Denmark, all came down. A lot of them we don't sell their whiskey because it's just not available.
Yeah.
So it was just literally, come and try things. Sorry, you can't buy it, but have a try, see what's going on.
Yeah.
And we tried everything from like local grain from Bifrost. Bifrost the Aurora distillery, I think it is, the most northerly distillery in the world, where they had to go and find grain which will grow up there in the Svalbard seed vault, and then spend years, nurturing this grain to have enough to be able to then make a local barley. And it was one of my favorite whiskies of the show, all the way to two from the west coast of Denmark, who are farmers who just make absolutely crazy whiskey with a load of spelt and rye and stuff like that in it, which tastes like like eating bread almost. Absolutely amazing variation. But they are almost sort of saying, we have our own individual country regions, but we want to avoid the pitfalls we've seen in other parts of the world and make it so we don't have to sort of close down what we want to do.
Yes.
I mean, I think we've talked about this before, that a lot of the whiskey region stuff is largely
nonsense, right? Yeah. Absolutely. But at the same time, and I actually hosted a tasting there a week or so ago for two completely novice drinkers, right? Really excited, all the enthusiasm in the world, but didn't really have any clue as to anything. I've tried a few whiskeys. I like sweet whiskeys. I don't like peat. That was the extent of what they came to. And so one of the questions that they had to me was about the regions. And again, I kind of preempted it by saying, look, it's nonsense to a degree, but for you guys getting involved, actually, it does help to kind of have an understanding that Speyside whiskies are supposed to be kind of fruity and lighter and a bit more approachable, and Islay whiskies are going to likely give you X, Y, Z, right? And it just helps it, I think, for people who are completely novice, because again, for the three of us, God, we could sit down and, I mean, you more than any of us, Billy, but really go into the depths of geekery here and talk about all sorts of nonsense that most people at home probably never think about and don't care about, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that means that it's not helpful to kind of break down those barriers. It's like what we were saying to begin with about getting there with the Boann with, a little bit more information about casks. Just breaking down a little bit more information. And maybe the idea of regions is pigeonholing ourselves. Maybe we should move away from that. Maybe it is just more about more information for everybody, right?
I don't think it hurts, but it's kind of, look at the Nordics, right? Like if you've got here's your, if they say Lapland becomes a region, right? And it's like, okay, what does that
mean?
What does that mean at that point, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Someone in some marketing division somewhere has got to come up with some kind of flavor profile like the SWA have done for the existing regions, right?
For sure. No, you're right. Maybe it would be overcomplicated.
Well, on the region front, I have always been a skeptic of Scotland, and I've slowly softened over the years. Although someone's saying, I do like a Speyside. It's like, Twitch. We've got an article, I think it's just gone live today as we're recording anyway, so hopefully by the time people hear this, it'll be up for a little while.
For sure.
Dave Broon wrote us an article about regions in Scotland and the historical side of it, but also why they're rubbish, but also useful. So on this, literally Dave wrote an article which has gone up today. I need to actually go and poke it. It's gone up in a weird font for some reason. Anyway, we'll fix that shortly. But it is a really interesting thing, just all over the world, looking at regions. In China, North China versus South China, that's quite a big difference in climate and just everything.
For sure.
Culture. China is, even more than any other country, hugely sort of regional in sort of flavor profile and everything like that. And it'd be interesting to see if we start seeing that in their spirit production of whiskey, like we already do in Baijiu and Huangzhou and all the other sort of native Chinese drinks that we already have.
Yeah, I think, and actually that's interesting, isn't it? It's, I'm not going to go too much back to Waterford, and terroir as a thing within whiskey, whether you agree with that or not. But I think maybe a sense of place as to where you are is important. I was at really interesting Paul John tasting just before Christmas. And actually it was fascinating to have the guys from the distillery come in and actually explain, right, why is it called Paul John? Why does that sound quite English? What does it mean being from Goa, and how that as a region is different to some of the rest of India, both in terms of temperature and climate, but also culturally as well, in terms of why they keep on putting out Christmas editions, for example, because it's where actually the majority of Christians within India are based. So actually there is a local demand for a Christmas themed whiskey.
For sure. That's interesting. I have to say there, as we're chatting away here, loving the conversation, this is very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not picking up the brandy. I
am a bit. Actually.
You are?
I'm getting a bit sour grape on the finish.
So I get this kind of almost porty side to it. Almost like a very small touch of something a bit more winey. I'm not getting the brandy necessarily.
I get like a very sort of cognac-y, sort of crisp, sweet fruit through the middle of it. A very, very sort of like traditional French grape brandy sort of feel to it is my thing. I get right in the middle of it.
Right.
But I don't mean that sort of more winey, sort of porty edge, maybe a white port for me rather than that sort of
Right,
Chevet port.
yeah, absolutely. I know the crispness is definitely, that mid-palate crispness is lovely. It's really fucking good, to be honest. I wasn't. This one, unfortunately, guys, this one isn't currently available on the Whiskey Exchange. I think it's sold out. This is a small batch or a single cask.
When we launched with the limited edition, this one, and also their regular ongoing.
Okay, so you've got a couple of them still online.
Yeah,
so the blended version online, £37.50.
Okay, I mean, yeah.
Which I was like, what? And then you've got another sort of, again, similar to this, more limited edition, £52.
Yeah, and now that's one of the things.
I'm really surprised at, like,
even bring them right over from the other side of the world. These are, still fairly inexpensive. They're relatively accessible, and they are a little bit different.
Yes,
I'm really looking forward to the Ligeot arriving because that's maybe slightly less different to sort of more traditional whiskies we have.
Yeah,
but absolutely fantastic, and they're doing some weird experiments, and we'll be able to get those things that are very different. Sure. The bottle I did bring back was a Huangzhou cask, which is a Chinese yellow wine cask. So
cool.
a type of drink you just don't find over here at all. And
what is yellow wine?
I'm still not entirely sure. I've been asked to judge it in the past because I do other sort of like Asian drinks, and I've always said I don't know enough about Huangzhou. I think it's a grain-based wine, and so it's basically but I'm not entirely sure. I could be entirely wrong. I do apologise to all those lovely Chinese spirits.
So that's fine. That's great.
But it's on my list of things to learn about because there's so many interesting drinks which are unlike anything that we have over here.
For sure.
Over in East Asia.
Yeah.
I do a lot of work with shochu and aomori, which are sort of traditional Japanese drinks. We have a load of soju turning up shortly. Not the if people know Jinro, which is basically like watered down vodka with fruity flavour in it. That's the traditional soju you find in Korea. We've got some Andong soju, which is the old-fashioned, sort of like over-the-top weird stuff.
Okay.
We've finally managed to source some of that. It's 8 months late, but apart from that, it's all good.
All right.
There's a fantastic explainer article on our website that I launched 8 months ago.
that.
Yeah.
But we'll hopefully have some of that soon. We're trying to bring in these things which are interesting and a bit different. And for me, absolutely selfishly, I can't afford to go over to East Asia that often. I've been over 3 times now, twice to Japan, once to China, and I brought back and tried everything I could. I was looking at going to Korea in a couple of months' time, and I couldn't make it in the end, very annoyingly. But yeah, so finding these things over here and bring them in allows us to experience those.
Yeah.
And with whiskey coming in as well now, my big thing is I'm waiting to see more of that influence and see how they make things a little bit different.
Definitely. Now, before we crack on to the next 2 drams, I want to stop at this point because this is Trending Whiskies of 2026 for our beautiful audience at home. I want to know from both of you, which of these are you picking out for? What are you picking for whom, I suppose? We've got 3 very different styles of whiskey here, 3 different corners of the world. Ian, what would you recommend to a novice drinker out of those 3, for example?
Ooh.
There's people at home who may be a little bit new to whiskey. They've been following us for a minute or 2, but they're not got too many bottles on their shelf. What would you recommend out of those 3 as something interesting that they could sink their teeth into moving forward into 2026?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think if you've got a little bit of Scotch on the shelf and that's kind of what you like, and you're kind of interested in having an Irish whiskey that maybe fits that profile a bit more, then that Boann, I think, would be great.
Yeah.
I think also, if you're relatively new to whiskey and you're kind of looking for something a little bit punchier, that 48% on the Glengoyne White Oak is another kind of fine choice before you start kind of moving up into cask strength and single cask stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, it's so true. We would take the 48% for granted probably between the 3 of us, but it is quite a jump up from a flat 40 or a 43 or even a 46. So it does make that bit of difference. Okay. And Billy, for these 3 here that we've tried thus far, what would you say to somebody who's maybe a little bit further along their journey, quite enthusiastic, wanting to dive into, as we say, the new trends of 2026, the new trends of whiskey? Where would you point them?
Weirdly, I would probably first point them at the Glengoyne.
Okay.
In a very much a don't forget.
Right. Yes.
Because this is one of the things we do so much. You know, I'm a massive whiskey geek. I try lots of interesting things. I spend way too much money on whiskey myself.
Welcome to
but
the
it's
club.
always, I know I'm in good company, you know, but it's always that thing of we're always chasing the new.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I did back in the beer world many years ago. Because I was always after, what's the new thing? What's the new thing? What's the new thing? Never try the same thing twice.
Right.
I use Untapped, an app to track my beer sort of drinking, and I would never check in the same beer twice. I was very, very, you know, my unique number of beers and my overall number of check-ins, and it's like, they're about the same. That's a good sign. Look at me. I'm so, it's like, but nice things are nice. Don't forget that nice things are nice.
Yeah.
And so something like the Glengoyne is very much a good to remind you, the 48% means that folks who are a bit further along who like those higher strength things, they're not going to discount it quite so easily.
Definitely.
But it's just a don't forget that sometimes just what I refer to as boring bourbon cask whiskey is my favorite type of whiskey. And don't forget that. You know, walk into a bar and say, hello, can I have a mid-teen space cider from a bourbon cask, preferably refill?
Yeah.
It's surprisingly difficult to get a whiskey because there's so little of it out there of this old-fashioned sort of stuff.
Yeah. That's so true.
But for people who are trying to sort of explore, try and find different things, the Goalong and other Chinese whiskey when it lands, and you know other things from East Asia, so Thai whiskey. If you can get hold of the Vietnamese stuff, which I'm really trying to get hold of because I've met the distiller and I've met the folks behind it, and they're really great. But yeah, their whiskey's not leaving Vietnam, as you probably expect. But finding those things from far away and seeing how they compare and seeing how they're different, that's part of the fun. You know, that is the whole trying to find a new thing all the time. And at the moment, I'm putting together a tasting for a whiskey show later on this year. And I was talking to one of the organisers yesterday. We were just saying, well, I've got this stuff from Romania. I've got this stuff from Spain. I've got this stuff from Thailand. And like, yeah, we're a little bit blasé about it because we experience all these whiskies all the time. But for your average person, still they walk into a whiskey shop and you say, we've got Indian whiskey. And a lot of people go, oh,
really?
From India?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of that before. We got English whiskey, at which point in time they melt. They don't understand what's going on. Brains explode everywhere. So it's that thing of, Chinese whiskey. When they first announced they were going to be doing a load of whiskey in China, there was a bit of a weird backlash online from people in the classic sort of like, oh, China's coming in to muscle in on blah, blah, blah. Ignore all that, focus on quality, and there's lots of interesting whiskies coming from that part of the world now.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is definitely one of them. I'm very pleasantly surprised by this. Very, very interesting.
Well, we're going very close to home.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the next. Couldn't be closer to home, I don't think. So this is one I think everybody at the table is very excited about. We visited White Peak Distillery. It was actually one of the first distilleries that we visited to create content. Really, really exciting setup. One of the most lovely teams out there. Like some of the friendliest people. And if you haven't visited the distillery, go along. You will most likely bump into the owners. They are lovely. The whole team there, they'll welcome you with open arms. They've been putting out some very exciting stuff. What is it that we've got from Wireworks here today? This is just a bourbon barrel?
This is the White Peak Wireworks bourbon barrel, which sounds very boring.
Plain.
In that classic fashion, though, this is this is one of the whiskies that I was really waiting for them to do.
Okay.
When the distillery first launched, I'm a massive fanboy. My cask that I have there.
Wow, you are a fan. You've got a whole cask, have you?
I have a little cask that's gone around a bunch of English distilleries, and it turns 3 on the 1st of April.
Oh, exciting.
If anybody's visiting the distillery and you're sitting around in the warehouse drinking, there's a teeny tiny sort of baby cask. Is it 20 litre?
Okay.
So it's smaller than every other cask in the warehouse, just sat there propped up next to there. So if you see it, please give it a pat from me.
I will do, absolutely.
But yeah, so they did lots of STRs. They did lots of sort of big wine casks. Big casks because it was young whiskey and they were trying to create flavour and everything quite early on. But I was always impressed by their underlying spirit. A little bit of smoke to it, but quite fruity. They play around. They throw in some beer yeast as well as there's regular distiller's yeast in their fermentations to try and get an interesting flavour at the fermentation stage. And so the second the bourbon cask lands, bourbon cask is very much, for me, the mark of a new distillery. If you can put out a bourbon cask matured whiskey and it's good, and so you don't have to rely on stunt casks, as I put it. I pinged Tom part of the distilling team, brand ambassador, everything, when this came out. And my note was just, finally, something that's not a stunt cask. And I got a slightly rude message back, appropriately. But I was really pleased to see this because you can taste the distillery as well as the cask. And it's really clearly showing you that flavour of the distillery. And I say, for me, bourbon casks and that side of things, it's very much where a distillery says, hello, we're now grown up.
And also, it was the Whiskey Exchange Whiskey of the Year.
But that also did happen. Very annoying. I didn't make it this year, so I know you were there. I've been there every single Whiskey of the Year we've ever done. I normally run the voting, and this year I was off at a fancy dinner, so I can't complain too much. I was being updated throughout to let me know what was happening. But I'm one of the folks within the company and elsewhere who nominated this, and so it got through to the final, and I was sitting there going, I really want it to win. I've tried all the whiskies in the lineup, and I think it's showing the best at the moment. One of the great things about our Whiskey of the Year competition is that we have a lot the same people come back every year. So we basically trained up a panel who don't just look at their own preference. They look at quality and from a slightly more objective point of view. They go back and they don't just choose a thing with the most extreme flavors. They're quite considered. And Dawn and I have been running the tastings for 10 plus years now. And it's brilliant to watch these group come back every time and actually be really considered. And so when something like this, last year, maybe the year before, we had Glenglassaugh, Sand End was up there as one of the top whiskies, a very, very delicate whiskey, the sort of thing you'd normally expect to be swamped by all the big peaty and sherry things. And this year, an English bourbon cask whiskey won. And that really sort of shows, one, we've got a really great group of people who we can bring along to it, but two, that this whiskey really is shining to be able to get past all those other more extreme entries.
Absolutely. So 53.4, is this cask strength or no?
I think it's batch strength, because they do several batches of this, it's ongoing.
Okay.
So they just do it at a high strength, and just this seems to be where it works best.
Okay, fantastic. And it does exactly that. I don't mind whether it is cask strength or not. It kind of sits perfectly. I don't know about yourself. I know you get funny about adding water. It doesn't need it, right?
No, absolutely perfect.
It's lovely, right?
Yeah.
And it's got a really wonderful texture to it as well.
Yeah, I think the mouthfeel of this was, particularly excellent. Just mouth coating, like thick, unctuous. It feels like someone's kind of taken a fruit salad in the way that you've got a little bit of kind of orchard fruit, a little bit more of the kind of semi-tropical kind of melony flavors, but it's just so rich in the mouth, and then that kind of liquor smoke coming through on the kind of back palate and the finish as well, just elevating it.
And the way the cask influence as well, because like you say, liquor smoke on the back end, but also I'm getting slightly drying tannins, nice bit of oak, but again, not to the point of like, oh, what am I, it's like, wow, this is, like you say, unctuous is a great descriptor. Well done, as per. It's that whole journey. Really coats your mouth to begin with and leaves you with that slightly drying back palate, but with the whole middle, like there's a lot going on here. Very, very exciting.
I think Dawn was saying this is like 5-6 years old on average, the batch, and
that's disgraceful.
Yeah.
That's so disgraceful. The English whiskey can put out a 5 or a 6-year-old and it'd be this good. Like, that's crazy.
There's just no really youthful notes. To it, right?
No, not at all. This is a finished article. This isn't in the making. This isn't, we're working on something, try it as we go. This is fucking beautiful. This is really, really good.
The thing for me is the ABV. I was working down in our shops over the Christmas period, some of it dressed as Father Christmas, but that's a different thing for another day. Look on Instagram, you can see the embarrassment.
I will. I definitely will.
But the suit's upstairs for later if anybody wants to borrow it. So I've got a fake beard if you want to have a borrow.
Okay, yeah, I might need it.
But the customers would come in, and we have our shops are just in central London. This is not, we get whiskey geeks in, we just get regular people.
Yeah.
I want to talk about regular people a lot, because it's one of those things that when you get out into the shops, you can speak to folks who are just regular whiskey consumers who aren't saying, I only drink cask strength or anything like that. I was pouring this quite regularly for people, and folks who normally would bulk a little bit of 46% whiskey, because that's, if you think about it, if you're used to drinking 40% blended whiskey or 40% single malts, 46 is a bit of a punch.
15%.
48 is, quite noticeable. Yeah. And this is 50 plus. And so I was giving this to people, they were trying it and going, oh, wow, that's really nice. And then I would say, that's 53%. And there was a shock of, it's like, really? Well,
Wow,
it doesn't taste like I'm drinking fire like normal.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things often comes up when I'm speaking to just regular consumers who haven't dived into that whiskey world yet. It's finding those connecting points. And you were sort of saying about the Glengoyne earlier being that connecting point to help people get to that next level up. Again, 48%, but very easy drinking. This is very much this is something a little bit different. It's English. Everybody goes in there often going, I'm here to buy a Scotch whiskey or an Irish whiskey, or maybe even a Japanese whiskey. I hear they make whiskey there now. 100 plus years. But then I say, here, try this. And they go, brilliant. What is it? I say, it's an English whiskey. One, mind blown. Then I say, it's 53%. And the mind is yet again blown. And it's taking people from out their comfort zone a bit, but in a way that's really nice. And this is one of the reasons why, this is a great whiskey of the year, because it is something that we can use to introduce people to that wider world of whiskey throughout the whole of the year.
For sure. Absolutely. Spot on. I mean, again, it brings me back to visiting the distillery, and we were really impressed with it at that point. That was, 2-3 years ago? They've come a long way in a short time. I'm very, very excited about what they're putting out there. And again, incredibly reasonable. I was looking at this online earlier. Typically £60, 75p. Whiskey Exchange had that on special because it was Whiskey of the Year. You get £5 off. So £55.75. Less than 60 quid for something that's over 50% and of this quality.
Yeah.
It's hard to find stuff like that nowadays.
I mean, also kind of realize like Wireworks very like niche producer effectively. Like their output is, I mean,
minimal.
It's not a big distillery, right?
No.
Like look at it as some kind of like artisanal products, right?
Yeah. And it's not actually marketed like that at all, but they could really lean into that if they wanted to, because exactly it is very artisanal. It's very kind of, I think that these guys will have a massive cult following moving forward. I've already seen it kind of growing, and people like, oh, English whiskies, but have you tried Wireworks? And it's like, actually, I fucking have, mate. We went there, and it's amazing. Like, I can see why you're excited about it, I think that there are very few distilleries that manage to get that sort of status, particularly being English whiskey. Like you say, I think that the average consumer isn't aware of English whiskey. I do think, unfortunately, as well, and it's not warranted at all, there is a little bit of snobbiness with the enthusiasts about English whiskey, right? It is Scotch. It should be Irish. It should be Japanese. English whiskey, it's not kind of foreign enough to be exciting, right? It's just kind of like, we live in England, like us. No, that's not exciting.
It's the same thing like in sort of over in the Far East, people are talking about Taiwanese whiskey. It's like people in Taiwan won't drink Taiwanese whiskey. They want the imported stuff.
Right.
We want the foreign, Scottish stuff, which is not quite foreign, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so people are always, like that, getting things which are a little bit more sort of shiny because they're from overseas. And we are, as being English, we're very good at doing down English things. That's part of being English. But English whiskey is really, I think, starting to break through that a little bit. We've had English whiskey for a while. The English distillery is now up to releasing 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
So we have this new wave now of these newer distilleries coming through. Folks like Spirit of Yorkshire, the Lakes, Cotswolds, and White Peaks of like. Those first three, though, are not small operations, and they're sort of pushing quite big.
Yeah.
Then we have all these newer guys. I literally upstairs on my desk when I came today, I've got a big box of goodies from Rich at Retribution, who's playing around with just weird and wonderful experiments in not quite his shed, but his double garage, I think is probably the best way of putting it.
For sure.
And we are seeing more and more of it, and people are being more accepting, and that is a really great thing to see.
Yeah.
I think what would be great is to see an English whiskey or something kind of replacing some of the marketing juggernauts, which I know is very difficult in film or TV. Like you look, right, and you watch something like Billions, there's always like a blue label flying.
I see.
Right? Even so, like in the late season of the Night Manager, in the last episode, and no spoilers, people, a certain character comes back from the dead and then is asking for a single malt Scotch,
right,
and then goes Speyside, please, and it's you see that stuff like in the Bond films. You've got Macallan, but it's been implanted in people's minds for so long, right? That there is, I think, a kind of luxury associated with Scotch.
Yes, yeah. What's frustrating me more on that front, I watched something the other day and they had Glengarry and they called it Glengarryock. I was like, why you had that in the movie? Just put Macallan there and fucking keep it simple.
or a bit of Glenmorangie. So yeah,
yeah, exactly. Let's move on to the last one here, guys. I'm actually quite excited for this last one. We've had some fantastic kind of core range or widely accessible products thus far. We're going to finish with a single cask, which I know may seem a little bit counterintuitive for everybody at home. Trending whiskies of the year, you can't really pick a single cask. The reason that we picked this single cask, aside from the fact that this is actually a brand new single cask exclusive for the Whiskey Exchange, just gone live today.
I literally turned it on at 8:30 this morning. So yeah,
bright and early to be switching on a whiskey offer. I like it, Billy. You're a hard working man.
I was eating breakfast. Don't worry, it was fine.
Breakfast ram.
So the reason that we picked this, aside from the fact Benromach, exciting, single cask for the Whiskey Exchange, very exciting. There are lots of little bits and pieces that will pop up throughout the year, particularly on the Whiskey Exchange. I have to say, they do a lot of single cask, interesting little snippets, little bites from distilleries. And I always think it's worthwhile keeping your eyes peeled for a couple of reasons. One, normally very, very good value for single casks. But also, I think the beautiful thing about whiskey is finding those little oddities that you will maybe never try again. There is something incredibly romantic about that for me. You know, we talked about the white oak. We've talked about the excitement of Chinese whiskey, you know, talked about all different bits and pieces here today. But there is something really cool about being able to share something with friends, with family. This is a one-off. Run through all the geekery, all the spiel, talk about it, what you like, what you don't like. But there's a large chance that you'll never be able to try that whiskey again once you finish a bottle. And to me, that shared experience is one of the things that really kind of got me into whiskey. You know, again, a lot of the stuff that we do at the Whiskey Baron, small batch or largely single cask expression. And finding those single casks, there's something exciting about that on the back end from a production, from a, you know, a bottler point of view. But equally consuming it, I think that this is just very, very cool. So
I think I'd like to see, and don't take this the wrong way, more OB single casks, right?
100%. Why would I take that the wrong way? We're just doing it whilst the distillery's on.
But like, you know, like IBs are already, like single malt is a niche within the niche of whiskey. IBs are a niche within a niche, right? And single cask IBs, like, you know, how many times do I have to say the word, right? Yeah. There's a group of people, obviously, that will sit there, like, earlier on in their whiskey journey, they're more accepting of OB releases, right? And actually to be able to get into the whole concept of single casks, I imagine a lot of people would be more accepting of an OB one. And actually in some ways, having those OB single casks opens up the world of independent bottlers to more people because they're like, oh, I love Benromach. Oh, here's a single cask. That's interesting. Yep. Let me try that. Then it's like, well, where else can I get more of this fancy Benromach that's been bottled? And say, oh, someone else has done one.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Definitely.
Let me go and buy that.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. What I'd also like to see a bit more of, and it kind of touches on things that both of you have said at different points in this conversation. We were talking about, you know, links to the different chateaus or, you know, provenance of cask, etc. earlier. I would love to see collaboration between IBs and the distilleries. I think there's a huge potential for distilleries and independent bottlers to work together on releases to shine more of a light on what creations are happening. And in the same way that I do think the kind of the old world, you know, the wine world, it's just, they don't want to share provenance. They don't care about whiskey. It's, you know, our names are our names. We've been growing them for thousands of years, you know. And so unfortunately, you know, you've seen like Bruichladdich and they have their MRC. And for everybody who knows, of course it's Mouton Rothschild, but you can't say it. That's so frustrating. Yeah. In the same way, I would love to see independent bottlers and distilleries, particularly distilleries where they don't sell casks into the open market anymore, you know? I think there's a lot that independent bottlers do. You guys at the Whiskey Exchange are fantastic supporters of independent bottlers, you know? And I think it would be great to see, you know, Macallans and Bamors and bits that you can't really buy anymore being released, but being released in tandem. I'd like to see a bit more of that, you know?
Do you know what? I think there's a kind of slightly playground atmosphere sometimes that drinkers have, right? Like in the sense of, similar to kind of games, right? It's like, oh, I've got an Xbox, you've got a PlayStation. I hate you. Like, sod off. We're partners, right? Like, we like you, you like us, right? Like,
we're playing the same game here. Yeah.
You know, actually, why not say we've used a Moose on Rothschild cask, and then actually say at the Brooklady shop, like as a part of a special deal, like, hey, you buy the MRC cask, and actually you can get a good bottle of wine alongside it.
Exactly.
Find out about the category.
Yeah. Try the wine. I love this wine because of X, Y, and Z. Brilliant. I'm going to bring that information with me onto my next journey within wine and whiskey, you know?
Yeah, we've seen a few people try and do that, you know, even down to like, you know, Bimber did a release where they had the sherry, which with seeking the cask, they did that. The guys at Dalmore go on and on about the Methuselah and all this sort of business that they use.
Right.
But quite out of complete coincidence, just out of in my eye line, there are 2 bottles of whiskey over there. We have a bottle from the Thompson brothers and a bottle from the Hartcup.
Yeah.
And you're talking about independent bottlers working with the distilleries. So the Hartcup, that's all they do. All of the whiskies from the Hartcup all come directly from the distillery. They work with them to choose an interesting thing to go into their range, with the Hartcup focusing on weird and wonderful things that would never ever happen from that distillery. You know, weird casks and things outside of flavour profile. Their only exception being they did us a bourbon cask Canossique for our whiskey show last year, which is the wildest thing they've ever done because it's the most boring thing they've ever done. It's also one of the best things I think they've ever done. But the Thompsons, this came out this weekend, actually. People were talking about the Thompsons Mystery Malt Collection. And Simon Thompson popped up on Facebook to say, let me just explain a little bit more about how this all works. And his thing is we go to some of these smaller distillers. You know, a lot of it they just buy off the open market. But Lockleigh, brand new distillery, not loads of people know them still. They go to Lockleigh, and Lockleigh go and find them a really cool cask, which some of the Thompson brothers sort of like customers who are very different, particularly Lockleigh customers, mystery malt, you don't know what you're going to buy until you actually open the bottle. Yeah. So somebody might buy this bottle from their range, trusting Phil and Simon, and then they will get a bottle of Lockleigh and go, I'm not sure about this. But then they try it and go, actually, that's rather good, because the guys out those distilleries are working with the Thompsons to get their whiskies out to people who wouldn't normally see them.
For sure.
We want more of that. You know, we're very fortunate at Whiskey Exchange that we do a load of exclusives with distillers. We don't only go to IBs, you know, but I say the 2 in my eye line over there are both independent bottler exclusives. It's Benromach bottled by them.
Yep.
You know, we do a lot of work with the distillers to get those single casks out because, as you say, customers, a lot of people don't understand independent bottlers and don't trust them. I explained what an independent bottler was probably 100 times over the Christmas period because people don't understand what they are. But, you know, Benromach, what else we got? Tora Veg, we did one last month, which is my favourite Tora Veg I've tried so far. Really, really different to their normal output. But getting those whiskies out into the world, those weird and wonderful bits. And, well, obviously we are best. But when it comes to exclusives for shops, loads of shops are doing this. Loads of independent retailers are bringing out these great things. Our Tora Veg is part of a series of Tora Vegs released in lots of different shops. And they're all something slightly different, all showing a different aspect. But it's getting people out into shops rather than shopping, you know, from the Amazons of the world and everything like that. And it's giving them something a little bit different and a little bit interesting. And that's really what we want to do.
For sure. For sure. I'm absolutely loving this. What do you think?
This is great. This is
it's very rich, isn't it? This is Oloroso. This is big Oloroso. Yeah.
But it's the way that some of that peat cuts through it a little bit as well, but it's not too heavily peated. And I think, again, for people who are looking to maybe get into peat, who are kind of further down their whiskey journey, that maybe don't go in for some of the Islay stuff, you know, there's nothing medicinal about this. It's quite earthy, a little bit bonfirey. And I think it adds that kind of slightly kind of meaty, barbecuey kind of.
Yeah, I'm getting more of like a charcoaly.
Proper charcoal barbecue smoke. Benromach 15 won our Whiskey of the Year a few years back. And the big thing for that is just like, you know, smoky chocolate sort of flavors. And this has got that with a load of that extra fruitiness. But yeah, it's coal smoke, a very, very different sort of feel to we find over in Islay. And it's great new release. As I say, literally landed today.
Sitting incredibly calmly at 59.1. You wouldn't have picked that out at all. Really, really nice. Very warming. you know. But yeah, very, very well balanced for 59.1. And you guys have got this at 79.95 on the Whiskey Exchange.
And what's the age on it?
11. 11-year-old single cask, 59.1, I think.
So about that. I did a little flight when I was doing
59.1, yeah.
And this was the lowest in the flight. So like 15, 59, 60 something, and a ridiculous run at 60 something above that. So this was the sort of like the
entry level there. Yeah. I have to say though, like it really does sit. I would have guessed maybe low 50s, but high 50s is very,
it's
very
got
powerful.
that intensity, but it doesn't have too much of that alcohol over the top, which is what you want. The intensity is the big thing we're always looking for when we go for cask strength. When we've done our own independent bottlings, we do our own lines as well as sort of like the working with other people.
Yeah,
we may drop it down a little bit, because one of the things, back from days we used to be part of independent bottler as well, when Elixir Distillers were part of our little gang before they fled to about 10 minutes walk away. One of the sort of the overriding things was always make the whiskey taste nice out of the bottle. Yeah. And if you have a cask strength whiskey, sometimes it's not nice out of the bottle. You add a little bit of water to it, just make sure it's nice.
It opens it up that little bit to make it.
But you still have the opportunity to add water yourself if you want to.
For sure, yeah.
But you don't want it so you have to add water every single time to make it taste nice.
No, I agree.
This one, though, don't need to change anything at all.
This is like someone's barbecued a fruit and nut bar.
Oh,
I will be doing that for later on. Thank you.
Making me hungry. That's great. Yeah, it's delicious. Really, really yummy. So, lads, listen, I don't want to come to too quick an end. I'm actually really enjoying this. We should make the episodes longer for season 2, maybe 4-hour episodes or something, just so that we can really relax and enjoy ourselves. No, I'm only joking. We should stick to just the 5. What's the favourite of the day? Billy, let's start with you. Come on, you're the most knowledgeable of us here. People are going to want to hear what you have to say.
Well,
These 5 drams, what are you picking and why?
I'm going to go for 2, if that's all right.
Hey,
2 different.
Yeah, absolutely. Give us the whys, though.
So, firstly, is the Wireworks, because I'm a massive White Peak fanboy, and for me to say anything else, I'm fairly certain the next time I saw Tom, he'd give me a smack. But no, again, for me, when it comes to just the whiskey that I'm going to reach for, the whiskey I do have on my shelf always, I always have some White Peak at the moment. I really like that character. It holds its strength well. It has that intensity. And it's a nice sort of special occasion dram for me. It's not like an everyday thing.
Okay.
Which leads to inevitably number 2, which is the Glengoyne. Because,
for sure, a bit more of an everyday drinker.
It's an everyday drinker, but it's reliable. It also shows off the style of whiskey that I lament is not available as much as it should be.
Right.
That bourbon cask, refill bourbon cask, fruity, underlying spirit character sort of whiskey is what I want. I really want to be able to taste the distillery. I want casks to do, add some flavor, but not loads, and not mask the flavors that are already there.
Okay.
There's so much effort, and the bits of the science of distillation that I'm really interested in, and whiskey making, that I'm really interested in. It's all the bits up until distillation, really.
Okay.
Fermentation, flavor generation. Distillation is all about choosing the bits you want.
Yeah.
But you have to create those flavors up front.
For sure.
Bit of distillation, bit of maturation. There's some interesting stuff in there as well. I like all of it. But all those flavors up to that point, and you don't want to hide them away.
Yeah.
And that Glengoyne just shows off, hello, this is what Glengoyne is.
For sure.
It's not a teapot dram where you can taste it's just a very good sherry cask.
For sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. This is it. That's why I love it as well. Okay, so Glengoyne for the everyday, but Wireworks for that special occasion dram from Billy. Ian, do you want to pick 1 or 2?
I might go for 2 as well.
Go on then. Go on. Why not?
So I think, for the people slightly earlier on in that journey, like especially if you're coming from Scotch, like going to Boann, such a pleasant surprise, so different to a lot of other Irish whiskey out there, and just super palatable for a young age.
For sure.
They're definitely a distillery which this time last year, I wouldn't even have been able to tell you they existed.
Right.
But I'm certainly going to be following their journey from now on.
All right, wicked. I like that.
And then second, that Benromach.
It's good, right?
As yummy. I'm not sure I can say any better than that. Barbecue fruit and nut. It's just
it is good.
So tasty.
Yeah.
And I feel bad not putting the Wireworks in there, but yeah.
To be honest, I feel bad not putting all of them in there. My favorite are the all 5. Done. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd agree with all of you. The Glengoyne, I picked it for a reason. It does exactly what it says on the tin and more, because you don't expect such greatness from such an entry-level dram, right? The Wireworks is incredibly well executed, and I actually haven't tried that before today. That is very, very good. tried lots of their stuff, but that is particularly yummy. The Chinese is exciting. The Benromach is great and wonderful tasting notes there, but I'm going to have to go with the Boann today. Aside from the fact that the flavor is very unique and it really brought you on a journey from that kind of candied peel through that sort of slightly spoiled fruit and the really kind of interesting ending notes. I'm very excited about what they're doing over there. And I actually haven't spoken with the team. We were speaking with, it was the Two Stacks guys, wasn't it? And they've done some Boann, bottled some Boann. Just all of the different recipes that they're working on from times gone by, bringing back heritage to Ireland. There's so much going on in Ireland at the minute, a lot of excitement. And I think sometimes with people get overexcited. It's like with anything, right? And I think sometimes there's overhype over things. And unfortunately, I think that does, sometimes, with certain Irish distilleries, there is maybe a little bit of overhype happening. With Boann, I've tried lots of great stuff, and that is spectacular. So I'm really excited about what they're going to be putting out over the next year or so. But listen, 5 great drams, 5 very exciting sort of different areas of whiskey as well. We've got different regions, different styles, different brands. It's going to be an exciting year for whiskey, I think.
Yep.
And we're very, very much looking forward to having yourself and the rest of the Whiskey Exchange team on board with us, Billy. So thank you for joining us for this episode. Guys, remember, Season 2, we're partnered here with the Whiskey Exchange. We don't want to bang on about it. We don't want to make you jealous. But remember, all of the drams that you've seen here today, we've mentioned some prices. There are going to be links in the description below. You'll be able to buy them direct from the Whiskey Exchange. And of course, that Wireworks still has £5 off because it is the Whiskey of the Year 2025 for the Whiskey Exchange. So make sure you do
2026.
Oh, sorry. It's the Whiskey of the Year for this year.
Yeah.
Apologies for 2026.
Don't worry.
I already got it wrong. See?
It's an ongoing debate.
Okay.
So
Okay,
it's
there you go.
2026.
It is the Whiskey of the Year for this year, so it's just as well we've included it in the lineup then. There we go. Gents, thank you so much. What a wonderful little lineup. Great conversation. For all of you at home, looking forward to sharing the next one with you. But for now, that is all from us here at Uncut and Unfiltered. Sláinte mhath.
So far.
Cheers.